Okay, everybody, hello and welcome. We're going to go over a very one of our highest rated articles of the month, and it is on social emotional learning. And it's sort of a review, an overview, if you will, on the two contrasting views of social emotional learning. Because most parents, when we hear about the tenets of SEL, we're going to call it that for the rest of the show, we think, wow, these are really good things. You're teaching, personal responsibility. You're teaching to observe and respect the rights of others. These are things that are very important, obviously, hard to teach, but very important. However, there's a different side of social emotional learning that we want you all to know. So, to begin with, in North Carolina, social emotional learning is content that's put in all 12 academic subjects in North Carolina. That means it's required from the state down. Okay. So it's required in every district, every school. Now, there is some latitude within districts to choose different programs, but they're all that we found pretty much the same. We haven't found an exception yet, and we're looking for that because it is a requirement. So we wrote on that. We wrote what to look for, and hope that you guys got a lot out of it. We're putting it up on the screen right now. So definitely check that out. Share it with your friends too. A lot of parents don't know what this is about. It's incumbent upon each and every one of us to share. We got to do that. We got to do that regularly. So I'm bringing on Erica Goodpaster, who is a new writer with us, who wrote this article. Welcome, Erica.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, tell me about your background. What makes you interested in education stuff to begin with?
Well, actually, so after while I was going through college, I was a substitute teacher in my local school district, and where my children also attended. And then once I graduated, a position kind of fell in my lap, even though I hadn't intended to be a teacher. The position kind of fell in my lap, and I took it, and then ended up spending 3 years in that school district. So I see it, from the inside, and then I see it also from the outside. I have three children. Two have already graduated, and the third is a sophomore in high school. So we are still working through that situation.
Yeah, major transition there. So you really, I mean, the experience that you have is not only as a parent but as an educator. So you know these things, and and you pointed out in your article that they sneak this in kind of like a Trojan horse, right? Where it sounds great on the outside, and then on the inside not so good. So I'm going to read the basic tenets. We're going to put this up on the screen now of Castle SEL. So Castle is the main brand, right? It's the Kleenex brand, if you will. It's the main thing, and it's the framework that North Carolina uses: self-awareness, okay, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision making. So Erica, you point out in your excellently researched article that these aren't what they seem. Tell us a
No,
couple things.
yeah, no, they sound great, don't they? These are all things that we think every child should be learning for themselves, to help them become productive adults. However, when you start to look through them, you realize that they're very, very broad. I know that I have actually participated in a um, curriculum review where we looked through a boxed curriculum. Um, these are very vague, very broad, very vague. They don't specifically give you ways to teach these things. Therefore, teachers are able to interpret them on their own and apply their own values to what they're teaching.
Right. So I describe it to people as this iPhone. So everybody can buy the iPhone. The iPhone's a framework. Now, if I want to put apps on here that do things that are malicious, I can do that. So what this is, guys, is that every single classroom has a black box, if you will, that really licenses the teaching of sexuality, identity, this transgender grooming crap, as well as critical race theory. So that, just so you guys know, the engine, the fuel actually that fuels the engine of social emotional learning are surveys. Okay. They do surveys all the time. So to get the inputs, the justification is used. Gosh, we've got to survey kids so we can meet them where they're at. That's what you're going to hear a lot, right? So the baselines of get this attitudes and beliefs and values. These are things like, are you Christian? What do you think of Christians? What do you think of Muslims? What do you think of, Trump? I've seen some surveys like that. What is your sexuality? The surveys that I have seen have asked, what is your sexuality? And not one, not two, but three different ways. So your identity is important insofar as they want to beat it out of you. And that is what I've seen. And I've seen that because the curriculum matches up with that sort of baseline they get. And Erica, you've seen the surveys too. You know that they're giving these surveys after 3 and 4 and 5 months to, in effect, see if the teaching is having an effect or a response to change the attitudes, beliefs, not necessarily the behaviors, but the attitudes and beliefs, the stuff you get from your family, from your tribe of these students.
Yeah, definitely. And these are these questions. They want to know, if you have guns in your home, or you have, I don't know, just like how many sexual partners you've had in the last year, and assuming you've had any at all, and it's really disturbing the way that they, I hear so many parents that I talk with, through my volunteer work in the community. They talk about, their kids telling them about the things they've been asked. And I mean, they're really disturbed because, like, they're, like you said, these are things that they should be learning from their families and not from the school district.
Yeah,
How,
absolutely. You're right. It's sort of like, okay, in one spot, I'm going to show you, put it up on the screen. It's talking about teaching kids values, right? The type of values that are acceptable. Make no mistake about it. This is teaching children the type of values the government wants children to have. That is the problem. And we see here social awareness. This is taken right from Castle, you guys. The ability to understand perspectives and empathize with others, including those from diverse backgrounds, cultures, and contexts. It sounds great, right? It's a great skill to have if you want to have friends, etc. They're not teaching how to accept an intact family. They're not teaching how to accept devout Jews. I am one, and I know, right? They're not, or anyone of faith. They're not teaching that. They're teaching children of in age inappropriately, by the way. They're teaching children that do have values, which is most of them, right? Because they're young, and that's what we're teaching. They're teaching them to have respect for debauchery, for deviancy. It's not me saying it. Gays Against Groomers, which is one of the fastest growing groups in the country, they're saying it. They're saying, hey, sexuality should not be taught to other people's children, to minors in any situation. And children should not be outed as gay, straight, or whatever they are. And so this is not us saying that this inappropriate teaching of values. This is, Erica, this is a value that every American has. It's an American value to preserve innocence.
yes, ma'am. And I at the I am a practicing Christian. So one of the things that I have noticed is that, you know, the world is getting, or the not the world, but the country is getting more and more unfriendly toward Christians. When if you look back through history, those who hold Judeo-Christian beliefs actually were the cornerstone for things like human rights, because they said that everyone has value, and because they're made in the image of God. And so therefore, suddenly our beliefs are not, you know they're not safe because we don't agree, with everybody.
Was a very divisive curriculum. I mean, look, just want to say a word here. Catholics, our Catholic friends are also facing scrutiny, as well as Hindus. I mean, any belief, and as you know, in Marxism and in communism specifically, the elimination of God is critical. The elimination completely of gender is critical. I mean, look, the history of communism, you'll read and you'll see that in Mao's China, for instance, what they did was they made girls have the same haircut as boys, right? So
Yeah.
not to distract and not to get anyone to worship or be massively attracted to anything but the government to solve their problems and do their bidding. And we know where that ended up. We believe that we are in the middle of a revolution. And of course, you see revolutions from time immemorial, whether it's the, Chinese or the Russians, they went into the schools, and that's the point that we're at now. So they're doing it with curriculum. Now we have a Republican superintendent that we thought, and a lot of politicians, to be fair, have been duped. They are believing that social emotional learning is a solution for discipline problems. Well, we've been using it here in North Carolina since 2021. So that's 2 years. And we have out of control violence in schools. And we have an epidemic of teachers being raised because they're sexually grooming children. So it ain't working.
No, definitely. And one of the things I talked about in my article was that when they sell social emotional learning as a thing to these teachers, to these administrators, you know, they don't, these teachers, they're not doing their homework on what they're actually getting, what they're actually supposed to do. Even, it wasn't as prevalent back when I was still teaching, but as I look back now that I'm aware of what social emotional learning is, I can kind of see little seeds of it where, they wanted, just for example, they wanted to make sure that we were able to empathize with people from diverse backgrounds, which I thought that was, I was like, okay, that's great. I was gonna do that anyway because I was an art teacher, and so this is the way to bring in, art from different cultures and make it more interesting. But the thing is, though, when if you dig into it, and even a light dig, you're still not going to see the stuff. The district that I worked for, I fully believe that the administration is not, they don't want to groom children. Okay, I don't think that they are out to do harm to children. However, I think that they are not doing the deep dig and reading everything word for word. They fall into this based on science or research based, jargon, because if you
Yeah.
spend any time in education, there's lots of jargon. And this is the latest one, is research based. Well, just because it's based on research doesn't mean that the research is good, the research isn't biased, that, the research isn't, something, I don't know, that it's not malicious. Um, so I just feel like, you know, these, and the teachers that are, specifically the older teachers that have been there longer, again, I think they are getting duped by that Trojan horse, and they're doing, kind of like I was, where I was like, okay, well, let's teach more culture stuff from other cultures, sure. Whereas, the teachers that are coming out of education, out of the universities now, which
Right.
we all know that universities are captured, now that they are coming out of there, they are trained Marxists. They are ready
Right.
to implement their worldview on your children in the classroom.
Right. And it's giving them, again, this saying, okay, you can put whatever apps you want to. And they put porn on there because that's in fact, that's not hyperbole. That's in fact what they're doing. They're doing something called exploration of identity. And by the way, that's no business of the government. That's the business and the purview of the family. And this program supersedes that. So I'm going to play a video made by, or did Catherine Truitt put up on the DPI website. So when Truitt first was elected 2 years ago, she said, I'm not going to do SEL. It's very unpopular. I see where people are coming from. And then she does a turnaround and she records this. And now this is living currently on the DPI website.
We have 5 core social and emotional competencies: self awareness, or the ability to understand one's own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they influence behavior across contexts; self management, or the ability to manage one's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors effectively in different situations and to achieve goals and aspirations; social awareness, or the ability to understand the perspectives and empathize with others, including those from diverse backgrounds, cultures, and contexts. Number 4, relationship skills, or the ability to establish and maintain healthy and supportive relationships and to effectively navigate settings with different individuals and groups. And 5, responsible decision making, or the ability to make caring and constructive choices about personal behavior and social interactions across different
You
situations.
tell us what you think. You reported on this. You said, look, she's bought into it. What happened here?
Yeah, I kind of wonder, and I don't have any way to to confirm this, but I know that so many people are, becoming captured themselves by, especially at these higher levels, where, they're being
Explain what captured means.
captured means that they have been infiltrated with this, not so much with with the worldview that, this Marxist worldview, or also they are being persuaded that it is in their best interest, and, and also the best interest of their office
Funding.
to,
Funding.
yes, 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 that's kind of what I was getting at, but I didn't know if you wanted me to say that.
I think it's true. The truth
It
is
is.
always good. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So they're finding that if they don't implement this stuff, they don't get the funding that, they think they need.
Right.
Um, yeah. And so I know that we had, just for an example, similar to like with the COVID stuff, if teacher or not teachers, if districts took the ESSER money, they had to then, implement these COVID standards and activities. The same thing with this, I imagine, there's funding somewhere, and if people aren't implementing SEL, then they're not eligible for that funding.
Right, exactly. So there are strings attached. I mean, we've reported on this a number of times where districts will say, look, no go. We're not going to put SEL in math. We're not going to put it in reading. And the reason why is because our scores are absolutely in the dumpster, in the basement, below any standard. And we don't have the 10 or 15 minutes per day to devote to sitting on your haunches in a circle, talking about your feelings. And a lot of times that's what it is, especially when it comes to math. I'm going to put up what the math standards are right here. So as you see, the things we're talking about have nothing whatsoever to do with math. At a time when there's, I dare say, a literacy crisis in the state of North Carolina, we can also make the argument that we don't really have instructional time to devote to this stuff. Even, I mean, are we going to trade government funding for the futures of our children? Because that's what it seems to look like here from the feds.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me. I've especially after COVID, the scores across the board are really dismal. And, instead of wasting time on things that, one, kids should learn at home, and two, are none of the business of the school district or, the upper powers that be, we should be focusing on strategies to increase their proficiency in these, basic skills.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, this is for the parents to do, but you know, SEL does have some tenets of Marxism in it. For instance, it's lowering barriers. So there's some of these self-disclosure exercises, these things that they do in class where they're having all the students read out loud vulnerable things and confessions about themselves and their, innermost workings. That's what the, Mao's China did in the Marxist Revolution, is had actually farmers go out and confess sins that they've not even done, right? For information that can be used to make them compliant in the future. This social emotional learning curriculum it is absolutely erasing the boundaries between the child and society and the family and the child. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Data mining is also something that you pointed out. I mean, they're not just doing these surveys just because. I mean, they're taking a copious amounts of raw data and it's going somewhere where we don't know. When will it be used again in the future? We don't know. Will we be penalized for it? We don't know. And that's why it's important the work that you've done here exposing this because parents need to know.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think we already are starting to see the results of this data, because our kids are, they're on their screens, they're, watching things in the media, and then it's interesting to me how some of the things are really well targeted. Um, you know, part of my background has to do with some marketing, and I definitely think that that might be where some of our data is going, is to these, to media companies and marketing for these larger companies and organizations that are trying to push other agendas on our children.
Like
um
like drug companies, for instance, that it's okay to be 5 different genders, and there's something you can take for that, and ask mommy and daddy to take you down to the clinic and get that for you, just for an example.
exactly, that is exactly right.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, they wouldn't go to all this effort and waste copious amounts of classroom time. But another point that I wanted to make, because I don't think this was in your article, the amount of money that we're wasting on this is incredible. Because in Guilford County alone, they've got 2 SEL coordinators making 75,000 a year. I mean, I think the average salary in North Carolina is 62,000. So you've got $75,000 to pump in a whole lot of nothing and take 3 months off during the summer. What in the heck is that?
Right? I think about, how little um, the teachers make. And then I look at the administrative bloat that you see across all these different, school districts, and then state school boards and stuff. And I mean, the money how many superintendents do we, or assistant
Yeah,
superintendents
yeah.
do we need? How
Administration is bloated.
Yes, how many, like, I think the idea of, I think they call him a curriculum coordinator or something like that in the schools. I think that's a great idea, but the thing is though, I think also, um, that's another thing that the teachers can do the work, they're doing that work during their PLC time, their was it uh I forget, learning time when the grade level comes together and creates their curriculum and their lessons and stuff. But they have these, curriculum and instruction people that, are essentially doing the same thing that the teachers are already doing and taking a salary for it.
Yeah, I mean, another point that I want to make to you guys is that we have a lot of teachers in the alliance. They all tell us this. They don't like social emotional learning at all whatsoever because it takes away instructional time. Some of it, depending on what district you're in, some worse than others, will be micromanaging of what you have to teach. A lot of teachers are not comfortable with the stuff that they're having to teach. How do I know? Because they send the material to us and say, can you believe, oh my gosh, look what we're being mandated to teach? And, it takes away a lot of their creative ability, if you will, to be able to teach things that they think are important. I mean, they know their students in the learning realm better than anyone else except for the parent, right? And so if the class needs a little bit of help, on one particular thing, they have had their hands tied and can't focus on it.
Yeah, definitely. I think another problem with that too is that I know that the school that I worked at, teachers didn't have a set curriculum. I don't know if you remember, like when we were in school, you had your book and we, went through the book
Yeah.
during the school year. The teachers don't really have that these days. At least they didn't at the school I had. They had a pacing guide and with the standards that they needed to hit by this time and the things that they needed to make sure the skills that the kids had by these points, but how they implemented that was really up to them. And I think that, you know, I like the ability to be able to pick and choose. However, I feel like that makes you have to reinvent the wheel all the time. So instead of, spending all your time, in your PLCs, doing, this lesson planning and writing your curriculum and stuff, you could be instead, taking your break so that you can come back refreshed so that you can implement good curriculum for your students. So, yeah, so that's another one of my soapbox.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, you've got a good perspective again from an educator's point of view. You know this a little bit better, and then you know the marketing, so you're able to see the kind of manipulative practices and how they've marketed this. And so, what we're all about, is obviously uncovering all of this so that the parent can take action. And we're also all about educating legislators. A lot of school board members, they know that it's bad. They don't know how. They don't know why. So we're hoping that your article has done a lot to shed light on that. I know that we've got a couple more in these series so that people are able to really explore it. But I'm telling you, very, very well read, shared quite a bit because we need to keep educating about this. There's so much to know. And if you're, even two parent homes, but certainly single parent homes, it's hard to know, gosh, what do I look for? What do I ask? Right?
Sure, sure. And I know that, so much of the information out there is very specialized and very academic. And you get all these crazy pedagogical buzzwords in there that, normal people that aren't part of education are going to look at that and be like, I don't know what that means. And, so it turns a lot of people off. From doing more research, however, with my article, I wanted to just keep it simple. What is it trying to do? Why is it such a problem?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
and then, just remember, guys, we always say this is absolutely true. Confusion and complexity, it favors the powerful. So we're all about stripping back the bark on all this and letting you see things. So I think in about another 2 weeks, we'll have another SEL installment right after, the holiday, right after July 4th. We encourage you to, obviously watch these videos, read the articles, but share it with 10 people. Pick 10 people that even that if you think they're not really particularly interested, you're going to find that parents, grandparents, etc., they're going to perk up and they're going to be interested. So, Erica, thank you again. We're going to look for another story from you in a couple weeks. And thank you for coming on.
Well, thanks for